rightless as well. Hooray! Next up, my favorite level, Slide Lift Tower. So Slide Lift Tower is really easy. Thanks to acorn boosting, we're able to play the level almost in its intended way, which makes it still a bit annoying, but possible. The same is true for the ghost house, which we're able to reach after meta right press number 11. Here only the section where we become entrapped in this rotating block thingy is challenging, but this section can easily be cheated. All that we have to do here is to press down and we slide perfectly beneath all the evil chasing ghosts until the end of the section. The staircase is no problem either, since this time we're able to just go down. Ludwig's Clockwork Castle features the next problem, however. The moving blocks here are set up in such a way that it is impossible to make any progress without running to the right. They just always align in a pattern that makes it impossible to reach the next section. Luckily, a solution for this problem exists. As it turns out, we're able to change the pattern in which the platforms are aligned. If we tap one of those stupid blocks, it stops for a moment. Because of this, we're able to perfectly set up all the blocks here so that they make it possible to make it through the stage rightless. Hooray! The airship stage is luckily super easy, which means that we made it to the final world and still haven't pressed right during gameplay once. There are only 5 more levels standing between us and a rightless victory. Meteor mode is beatable, but super annoying. It's basically like playing the lottery. Making it through the level itself is easy, but there are randomized fireballs that drop down from the sky. Those may or may not drop down in such a pattern that they hit us while we jump, or they don't. We're able to improve our odds a bit by tapping them, but often they just spawn directly on top of us. There is nothing we can do against this here. We just pick up all the power-ups we can grab and platform towards the end of the stage until the evil RNG lines up in a way that allows us to beat the stage, eventually. The Magma River Cruise is another level that features a form of terrifying auto-scrolling. This level is one that had me incredibly worried before playing it, and on paper, this worst boat trip ever sounds like the recipe for disaster. But it ended up being quite easy. There is another meta right press required to enter a pipe at the end, however. 8-3 isn't too problematic, nor is the red hot elevator ride. Here we cheat this red hot and presumably elevator by just building a magical bridge towards the top. At the end, this level features a pipe which forces us to do the 13th and final meta right press in the game. This means we actually made it to the final battle. Before we reach Bowser and find out whether the ugly Turtle King kills our run or not, we have to make it through this section where Bowser Jr. attacks us with his dumb clown car. This area is surprisingly tricky. The best strategy to make it through here I found was to try to stay above Bowser Jr. for as much time as possible and use his ugly head as a way to reset our CR boost so that he isn't able to crush us. And then it is time for the final showdown. It's us or Bowser. It's a successful run or failure by Turtle. It's all or nothing here. So, alright. This boss fight was by far the hardest part of the Don't Press Left run, and doing this again, but this time without the right button, has me incredibly worried. I just can't imagine a way to do this fight without going right. So there is a reoccurring theme with the left-right runs, something I noticed up until this point. Namely, all the levels that caused us headache without going left ended up being surprisingly easy without going right. And most surprisingly, the final battle is no different. Ladies and gentlemen, it is possible to defeat Bowser without the right button. I wouldn't go as far as to call this fight easy, but it is very much possible. The way his shell face is set up just allows us to dodge him, and there is a spot high up in the air where his clever AI always decides to miss us. This means that we actually did it. Ladies and gentlemen, New Super Mario Bros. U can be beaten without ever pressing right during gameplay. The game is beatable with 0 gameplay right presses. Hooray! That was quite a challenge. So yeah, here we have it. It takes 0 gameplay right presses and 13 meta presses to beat New Super Mario Bros. U. Hey, it's C from the current, present, the previous, future and the actual past here. I just quickly double checked everything and noticed that I forgot to count a meta right press required to enter a pipe in Parabeetle Parade, which is actually called Flight of the Parabeetles in Red Luigi's version of the game. This brings the total meta right press count up to 14. Also, as it turns out, everything ABC decided not only to route Blooper's secret lair without directional inputs, but he's actually currently working on routing the whole game without the option to go into any direction ever. I can't wait to see how this works out. The link to his video will magically appear in the description as soon as this video goes online. So with that being said, let's travel back in time again. I hope you enjoyed this little video. If you did, don't forget to leave me a thumbs up and maybe feel especially like not looking forward today and want to hit the subscribe button as well. I hope that all of you have a wonderful new year and to see you soon. Goodbye. Is it possible to max out the high score in Super Mario Maker 2 to collect a total of basically 1 billion points in only 500 in-game seconds? A couple of days ago we took a look at this question and we came to a conclusion. Nope, sadly not. All that we were able to achieve were a lousy 788,086,500 points. Getting more points, sadly, simply appeared to be impossible. Naturally, this record only stood for about 8 hours before it got beaten, so today we're going to discuss lots of ideas that popped up in the comment section below our first high score attempt. We'll take a look at those potential improvements and we'll try to finally answer the question whether the perfect highest high score in Super Mario Maker 2 is possible. So you ready? Let's do this! Okay, so our old design basically kills 49 Munchers, 3 Bowsers and 5 Boom Booms every time we reload this area. Thanks to rapid reloading, we're able to kill all those enemies 10 times per in-game second. And the way we circumvent the rule of 7 is by clever power block and tangling. So let's take a look at a couple of ideas for improvements. The idea that probably popped up the most is the following. Can we improve the score by putting mushrooms on top of the pipe so that Toadette eats them during each reload? Well, sadly no. That's for 2 reasons. First, it is no longer possible to place power-ups on top of checkpoints in Mario Maker 2. So if we were to do this, we would have to get rid of the infinite checkpoint glitch points. Second, mushrooms do not respawn once they were devoured, which means putting them there only adds 2000 points once, but not per reload. Next, are we able to gain additional points by having pipes or blasters shoot out power-ups every time we leave the pipe? That sadly doesn't work either. Neither bullet blasters nor red pipes spawn something in the short 6 frames that pass between each reload, and reloading less often so that we can fit those in would drastically reduce the score, so that's another nope. The next idea, however, is a really interesting one. Can't we split the Bowsers and Boom Booms over all the different score batteries so that they grant us 8000 points as the first kill in a set of 7? So the answer to this question is actually surprisingly complicated. When 7 enemies are killed at once, then the first one is always 200 points, and then they grant us more until the 7th enemy dies, which grants us 8000 points. The idea here is to swap out the first 200 points Muncher kill for an 8000 points Bowser kill, so that we get a total of 24,200 precious score points for each score battery, instead of just 16,400. On paper, that would push up our per reload score drastically, but sadly there is a tiny problem. Bowsers are always calculated last when destroying a set of 7. No matter how we place the 6 Munchers and this Bowser, the Bowser will always get destroyed last, which means that putting a Bowser in a normal score battery doesn't improve the score it grants. Bowser or Muncher, we always get the exact same amount of points. So here is where this gets interesting. If we build a Muncher tower, this is no longer true, because if Munchers are towered, their calculation order changes. Now, the 2 Munchers at the bottom die first. then Bowser, and only then the towered munchers are affected by the POW Lotion. There is a strange quirk in the way towered enemies are handled when a POW block explodes. Only a maximum of 3 stacked munchers get defeated. If the tower is higher, the muncher at the top survives. So if we want to kill 7 enemies at once, then the best setup is this one. Here we replace the 1000 points kill with the 8000 points Bowser kill. This is an improvement of whopping 7000 points per reload per score battery. That is pretty significant. So why didn't we use this trick? Well, that's because we sadly don't have enough room to stack munchers in our design. Since we're trying to entangle as many sets of 7 as possible, we just don't have the space to tower the munchers. So giving the Bowsers and Boom Booms their own separate set is the best solution for now. Okay, so the next improvement idea that popped up often is the following. Can we just use vertical sub-areas, since those stay permanently loaded, so that we can fit in more than 8 score batteries? The answer here is a nope, once again, for 2 reasons. First, even if everything stays loaded, it doesn't change that we would have to load the area first, which would mean that we can't rapid reload and would reduce the score drastically. And second, and much more importantly, when I spread the rumor that vertical sub-areas are permanently loaded, I sadly lied to you by accident. Vertical sub-areas don't keep everything above us loaded. What is actually happening is much wilder and much weirder. So shout out to YouTuber SmashBoss who figured out what is exactly going on. Basically the game does not keep everything above Mario loaded for whatever mysterious reason. It only keeps the uppermost 16 blocks globally loaded in a vertical sub-area. We can visualize this here. This two-state flipper contraption is placed exactly 16 blocks below the upper area border, which means it is still inside the permanently loaded area. No matter how far Luigi travels, the two-state flipper never unloads. But if we put this contraption only 1 block lower, then it suddenly is no longer inside the permanently loaded area and it despawns after a short while. Yep, I have no idea why this is either, but sadly it definitely doesn't allow us to improve the score. Alright, so those were most of the suggestions below our previous high score attempt, but as it turns out, none of those allow us to actually beat our old highest high score design. So in the beginning of the video I said that our previous high score only was the highest high score for about 8 hours. So what is the trick? What is the mechanic that was used to beat the high score? Well, the answer to this question is actually surprisingly simple. As it turns out, I missed one super important trick. POW blocks have a specific loading order that allows us to entangle them in a much more efficient way. So check this out. Here we have 2 POW blocks and 2 sets of 7 munchers. The lower POW block is only able to reach the lower row of munchers. The upper POW block is able to reach both rows of munchers. So if we run the game, we only score 1 set of 7 munchers, since 1 POW block is able to affect both sets of 7, right? Well, right. We only get the normal 16,400 points once we start the game. Everything behaves as expected. So here we have the exact same setup, but this time we put the POW blocks on top and the munchers at the bottom. The POW at the top is only able to reach the upper row of munchers. The POW at the bottom reaches both, once again. So if we start the game, we only score 1 set of 7 again, since 1 POW block affects both sets of 7, right? Well, no. This time we actually score 2 sets of 7. Holy fuzzy, what is going on here? Well, the answer to this question is actually surprisingly simple. POW blocks just have a set loading order. They're calculated one after the other. If one POW already destroyed a set of munchers, then the next POW isn't able to kill them anymore. The POWs are calculated first left to right and afterwards top to bottom. Hooray! All that's left to do for us now is to find the optimal POW block entanglement setup, so that we're able to trigger the maximum amount of muncher murders per reload. So huge, gigantic and enormous shoutout to Reddit user Beatrek. He or she was the first one to figure out this trick and to build an optimal setup. This is what the Beatrek setup looks like. Here we have a total of 11 sets of 7 that get perfectly transformed into precious score points every single time this room is reloaded. This design uses every single spot in the entity limit. It kills 335,000 munchers in 500 in-game seconds. And most importantly, it runs us 204,000 points per reload. Ladies and gentlemen, 204,000 points per reload is enough to reach the perfect highest high score. Hooray! Watch now how VDrek used this design to reach the perfect and absolute highest high score in Super Mario Maker 2 for the very first time in human history. The race is over. We now know the definitive answer. The highest high score in Super Mario Maker 2 is 999,999,990, and it was, as far as I can tell, first achieved by VDrek on the 24th of July 2019 in his legendary video. My lamest achievement ever. So, is there anything left for us to do now that the highest possible high score has been achieved? Well, actually yes, let's change this silly high score challenge into something different. Let's change it into the world's most boring speedrunning category. Because while VDrek was able to achieve the highest possible score, it took him 491 in-game seconds to reach it. But there is actually a slightly faster way to max out the score, because this design can actually still be improved. So do you remember the Bowser trick we took a look at the beginning of the video? The fact that we're able to score more points per score battery if we place one Bowser into each score battery and place down the munchers as 2 stacks of 3. Well, thanks to our newly gathered knowledge of power block loading order, we're finally able to incorporate this into a high score design. This is what such a design looks like. Here we once again have 11 score batteries, but this time all Bowsers and Boom Booms are placed in such a way that they optimally increase the per load score of their score battery. The way this works is the following. This power block is the first one to load and only kills all enemies in this score battery. Next, this power is activated and kills everything that lives in this area. Then this one, and afterwards the lower power blocks are triggered in the same order until each power loaded and all batteries got defeated. This design now grants us a total of 213,800 points per reload, which means this design hits the max score in only 468 seconds, which, as far as I can tell, is a world record in the lamest speedrunning category in video gaming history. It's the only speedrun that takes over 5 hours of pressing a single button. Hooray! So is this the absolute definitive fastest way to max out the score in Super Mario Maker 2? Well, I honestly have no idea. It's pretty optimized as far as I can tell, but there's a good chance that someone finds a faster way to reach the perfect score within the next 8 hours for all I know. One way this design can definitely be improved drastically would be by using black hole glitch enemy cloning, but I decided not to look into this for 2 reasons. First, the glitch will probably be patched in a couple of weeks, and second, see, Nintendo is deleting offline levels that use the black hole glitch. Optimizing such a design takes forever, and I don't want to put dozens of hours into a design that Nintendo then just deletes. Also, please Nintendo, stop deleting offline levels, that's so childish. Anyway, so here we have it. It is possible to reach the maximum high score in Super Mario Maker 2, and the currently fastest way to do it glitchless takes 468 in-game seconds. I hope you enjoyed this little video. If you did, don't forget to leave me a thumbs up, and maybe you feel especially maxed out today and want to hit the subscribe button as well. I hope that all of you have a wonderful day and to see you soon. Goodbye! So recently, I've been toying around a bit with Miyamoto. For those of you not familiar with it, Miyamoto is not only the name of, well, Miyamoto, but Miyamoto is actually also the name of a new Super Mario Bros. U level editing and ROM hacking software. What Miyamoto allows us to do is to basically alter, rearrange and modify all the beautiful levels in New Super Mario Bros. U. The editor is incredibly powerful. It actually easily allows to create a completely new Mario game within Mario Bros. U, which is really awesome, but that's actually not what this video is about, because there is something I personally found even more interesting hidden within this great level editor. It grants us access to tons of unused items and features that are still within the code of New Super Mario Bros. U, but never actually appear inside the real game. Some of them are just small, neat little things that didn't make the cut into the full version, while others are actually pretty cool obstacles that at some point in development probably had a full level built around them, but then got kicked out for some reason. So today we're going to take a look at a lot of those cut features that are still hidden within the game's code, and we will speculate a bit about what their purpose was and why they were cut. So you ready? Let's do this! Okay, so Mario's day starts in the middle of a frozen ice cave, and immediately a couple of things catch our eye that certainly don't exist in the real game. First, and most obvious, the snow particle effect in the background isn't used in the release version of the game. As most of you wonderful ladies and gentlemen probably noticed at once, here we have tons of snow particle effects on top of each other, so that it is a bit easier to see what it would have looked like. Hooray! But that was actually not the only thing that was new at the beginning of this frozen cave. There is also a really cool unused bullet blaster variation. Those blasters cycle up and down and always shoot out a dangerous bullying bullet bill when they are at their highest or lowest. There are tons of different settings possible with those, and they are a really interesting item that was unfortunately cut. We'll see more of them in a second. Also, the background theme we see here is actually not featured in the real game. This is now probably going to be a huge shock for many. But as it turns out, New Super Mario Bros. U is actually written in the same engine as New Super Mario Bros. Wii. This background was used in the Wii version of the game, if I'm not completely mistaken. And there are a couple of other Mario Wii artifacts still in the game. The World 1 overworld theme of the Wii version, for example, is still in the Wii U game files as well. Anyway, if we actually start to play the little ice cave hack we made for Mario's pleasure, then we soon find the next unused items. First, this Piranha Plant trap thingy didn't make it into the release version. And second, and much more interesting, there is this moving ice platform. Those platforms actually exist in the game. The penguin level in the fourth world uses them, but they were always static there. At some point in development, they had those platforms moving around, and to be honest, I totally see why they scrapped them. The mix of them being ultra slippery while moving around makes it quite unpredictable to platform on top of them. Next up, we run into one of the most interesting cut obstacles. But you know what? Before we take a look at it, I'm getting a bit tired of this samey ice cave theme. Maybe we should change it to a swamp area? Maybe even add some poisonous water? That's better. But you know what? Let's go with an underwater background instead. But let's put rising lava at the bottom. Yeah, that works for me. Hooray! So now, Mario faces those rotating ice cubes in the middle of this frozen underwater lava cave. Those cubes come in many different shapes and sizes, and with lots of different customization options. Those are one of the most fleshed out cut items, so it's really surprising that they never use those in one way or another in the main game. They're really cool. The growing, shrinking bullet bills also exist in an upside down version that allows us to create areas where bullet bills grow out of the ceiling, which seems to be a pretty cool use for them if you ask me. Actually, now that I think about it, those growing bullet bills would make for an awesome addition for Mario Maker 2. We're almost done with our sunken frozen fire cave now. There are just a couple of smaller things for us to take a quick look at. So first, those small not again. Those ice blocks that Mario is able to pick up. They aren't the most exciting thing ever, but still deserve a mention. And finally, there is this huge sinking platform. The smaller version of the sinking platform actually appears in the game, but as it turns out, at one point, the small platform actually had a bigger sister. Hooray! Okay, so that was the first new showcase. Before we take a look at the second one, let's first talk a bit about a couple of other small hidden things that are within the code of the game. So first, there are a couple of unused level files. Most of them aren't too exciting, but look more like small testing areas. For example, there is the mysterious Toad House Type 4 area that not only looks like the area where the credits take place, but also crashes the game if we try to enter it. There's the famous AW1 climbing level with corrupted tileset area that crashes the game. There is this jungle area that is actually really fleshed out and quite fun to run through. No idea what they were testing here, I'm just pretty sure that this wasn't a real stage at some point, since there are a couple of spots where a plumber, when he's Big Mario, almost soft locks if something goes wrong. This cut level is also quite well developed. You have colorful blocks, lots of fuzzies, flying Koopas, the area doesn't crash, which is also a huge plus in my book, and we even have those strange rock-throwing crabs. Then there is this area that only consists of Lakitu and a couple of moving platforms, a fuzzy mountaintop climbing stage that always drops Mario into an abyss when loaded, and a desert zone area that only features this little screen. Most of those areas are probably just testing areas that somehow slipped into the final files, though I do wonder what the jungle and fuzzy levels were at some point. Those definitely had some effort put into them. Anyway, let's take a look at a few more cut obstacles. So first there are those balance platforms. They are classic Mario obstacles and they act as they always did, since the very first game. It's two platforms connected with a rope. Interestingly, those exist in the game's code even though they never appear. Most likely another Super Mario Bros. Wii artifact. There is also something more subtle going on here. The fog effect isn't used in the game. Let's overdo the fog a bit so that it's easier for us to see it. Beautiful. Simply amazing. I'm honestly baffled why this perfect fog texture didn't make it into the final product. This is fog perfection. Okay, so the next cut item comes with a small story attached to it. So everyone's favorite Crow, Crow, has been toying around with new Super Mario Bros. U ROM hacks a lot recently. He actually made a really awesome ROM hack stage built around ice flower mechanics. So there was this one section in his level that featured this 4-way platform that moves into any direction if Mario stands on the right spot. So I saw the clip and wrote him something along the lines of, "I love what you did with this 4-way platform, that was amazing." And he replied something like, "Thank you, but I actually didn't put that one together, that's just an unused item in New Super Mario Bros. U's code." And I was like, wait, there is unused stuff hidden within New Super Mario Bros. U? And here we are. Huge, gigantic and enormous shout out to Psychro. He was a tremendous help in setting everything up for this video. There is a link in the description to Psychro's level and I highly recommend to check it out. It's really cool to see what can be done in New Super Mario Bros. U by someone who actually knows what he's doing. Okay, so back to our content. Next up is one of the weirdest code leftovers. So there is an object in the code that Miyamoto labeled Wooden Box Spawner. So what does Wooden Box Spawner do, you might ask? Well, it spawns wooden boxes. Endlessly. That one really left me wondering why anyone ever would want endless wooden crates in a game. It took me a while to figure it out, but I believe this spawner probably once was part of a conveyor belt castle stage, since there is a similar level in the game, but with metal crates instead. Okay, so there are two more small things for us to take a look at in this area. First, there is this coin fountain, which didn't make it into the final game, and then there are those fire bars that never appear. And once Mario made it past those fire bars, he's finally allowed to leave this area by throwing himself over the exit cliff. Hooray! In case anyone is wondering why we're having exit cliffs today, well, I haven't quite figured out how to link up doors yet. Sorry, Mario. Okay, so next our plumber finds himself in the middle of a flooded desert. So first, this air background theme is never used in the finished game, although a very similar one is. Second, we once again have a secret particle effect in the background going on. This time it's an amber effect. But the most interesting thing here is that we actually have a wind effect placed in the stage. So the wind effect is strange. It's most likely a carryover of New Super Mario Bros. Wii, but it doesn't affect Mario in the slightest. In fact, it only seems to affect two things: rope ladders, and weirdly enough, the checkpoint flag later in the level. If we continue this path, we run into a couple of other neat things. First, those floating question blocks. Those only work on top of water and look a bit weird if you ask me, and second, and much more interesting, here we have another cut bullet bill variation. Those blasters shoot dangerous, chasing, blinking bullets that even explode after a while. The metal box in the middle is also a cut object, though the blasters are a bit more interesting. You know what? I already have seen enough of this background. Let's change it. Let's change this area into a castle and let's swap the water at the bottom out with lava? No, let's go with poisonous water this time. Also, let's place one of those gigantic Koopa shell caves from Mario Wii in the middle, because apparently they are also still in the code. I mean, why not? Wait, those crashed the game? Well, never mind then. Alright, the next thing Mario encounters are those flying mechanical Cheeps. So, ladies and gentlemen, I need your help. I could swear that those appear somewhere in New Super Mario Bros. U, but Miyamoto has listed them as unused. Do those appear in the stage, or am I just slowly going crazy? Anyway, the next unused item Mario encounters is this golden pipe. It's hard to say why they never used this glowing golden pipe version. Maybe there was a problem in the pipe's collision code, maybe they just weren't able to find the right level for it, maybe it's because the pipe is ugly as fuzzy. scholars remain divided. So there is one final cut obstacle for us to take a look at. This really fascinating huge bullet blaster with a beautiful Luigi emblem on top of it.
Thunder!
But the really cool thing about this blaster isn't actually that it is a huge Luigi fan, but that it shoots gigantic chasing red bullets. After having been shot, those bullets fly towards the same vertical position Mario is currently at, which makes them really hard to dodge for a poor plumber and a really cool obstacle. So that was the last thing for us to take a look at, but there is actually still a lot more stuff hidden. Tons of objects that appear in the game have settings that we never get to see, and there are even more cut items, though most of them just crash the game once played. Huge thanks again to Psychro for helping me with setting everything up, and another huge and enormous thanks to the team behind the Miyamoto editor. You guys are doing incredibly important work for the community. Seriously, huge thanks. And with that being said, I hope you enjoyed this little video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to leave me a thumbs up and maybe you feel especially like an awesome rotating ice block that got cut for absolutely no reason today and want to hit the subscribe button as well. Seriously, why cut the ice blocks? Anyway, I hope that all of you have a wonderful day and see you soon. Goodbye. Mario Maker 2 is finally here, and we got a lot of new stuff to toy around with. Slopes, snake blocks, boom boom, two-state blocks, and many other items got added to the game. But are those items any good? How useful and well implemented are the new items really? Which item is the best new addition and which one adds the least to the game? Well, today we're going to finally answer these eternal questions, because today we're not only going to review the new obstacles and discuss how useful and well implemented they are, but we will also give each one a score that determines how good they are objectively, in my opinion. So you ready? Let's do this! Okay, so first things first, we're going to rate the new items on a scale from 1 to 5 fuzzies. The more fuzzies an item gets, the better it is. Obviously. Also, we're only going to take a look at the items that were added to the original 4 game styles, since 3D World is so fundamentally different that I don't feel comfortable to talk about it yet. Alright, so let's start with the snake blocks. So, those are kind of a mixed bag. First, they're obviously really cool items when used in the intended way, and they allow for a lot of really interesting stages to be created. But there is also a lot of wasted potential here in my opinion. So, first, I'm not so pleased with the fact that snake blocks can't travel over ground blocks. That makes them a bit awkward to use for contraptions. If we, for example, want a snake block to explode a poor and innocent bomb, then we can't just have the snake block travel towards it like, for example, a block on tracks would do. Second, I really miss the option to have snake blocks loop forever. As it is now, they always drop down as soon as they travel to the last tile. And thirdly, it would have been really cool if there was an option to have the snake blocks travel as soon as they get loaded, without the need of Mario touching it. But on the other side, there are a couple of really interesting things that can be done with them. First, they work excellently as timers, as seen here. Here Mario activates a snake block and then he has to wait until the snake block kills an enemy at the top and triggers a P-switch. That's a really cool new timer setup. And best of all, it's a timer setup that flawlessly works in the 3D World style. So that's something. The other really cool thing is that they push items that are in front of them, which is something we couldn't do as easy before. They're great in general when it comes to swapping the position of items. So I'd say they're overall a really decent addition with a couple of unfortunate limitations. Therefore, let's score them with 3 out of 5 fuzzies. Next up, Boom Boom. So Boom Boom isn't the most exciting new thing at first glance, but I'm really glad that Nintendo was able to get him under contract for Mario Maker 2 nonetheless. The first Mario Maker really lacked simple enemies for boss encounters, and Boom Boom really helps fixing this. His moveset is very simple, but I kinda like that. Boom Boom on his own just doesn't do much, but the interesting challenge here is coming up with interesting arenas to fight him, and a simple moveset is actually preferable for this. His winged form is also really interesting to fight, and I really like that he got his own enemy limit, meaning that we can have 5 Boom Booms in a level and can still add 3 Bowsers if we feel like it. While Boom Boom might not be the most exciting addition at first glance, I believe that he will really add a lot to the game in the long run. Therefore, let's score Boom Boom 4 fuzzies. Hooray! So the angry sun is next. Thanks, I hate it. It doesn't go into pipes. We can only have one of them. The position of the sun is always fixed on screen. Doesn't interact with most items in the game. It's rather meh how Nintendo implemented the poor sun. I start to understand why it's so angry. There are only two small things that save the angry sun.